Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Intern Podcast. We're over halfway through the year with it officially being July, and it's so insane to me. And while I do wish time would slow down just a little bit, I'm already ready for fall, as it's still way too hot out here for me. Like, if I step outside and I become one with the pavement, that's a problem. And so because of that, my summer has been comprised of staying inside, doing my work, and playing games to decompress. And our guest on today's show shares the same love for games as I do, and I'm so happy to introduce Dangela Fonseca. Dangela is a recent graduate from the University of Pennsylvania, majoring in psychology and minoring in nutrition and linguistics. Her academics further fuel her passions to work in an industry she's loved for a very long time: gaming. Dangela aspires to work in gaming just actually before the games can be made, through the field of UX research. During this episode, Dangela and I talk about how she found UX, the UX research process, challenges within the gaming industry, and understanding the users, which are most likely you all listening. We also explore her minor in nutrition with an open discussion around the importance of maintaining your physical health through nutrition. For those who want to connect with Dangela, her LinkedIn will be linked down below. And with that, of course, let's get into the episode. Hi, Dangela, how are you?
Hi, Maya. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Super glad that you are here with us today. I am so excited to talk to you about everything you have going on in your interests and your passions, especially because it's something we really have not touched on a lot here in the Intentional Intern podcast space. So I'm very thrilled to be here with you today.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to be here. Let's get started.
Yes, and I would love to kick us off by talking about you. So please introduce yourself for our audience.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dangela Fonseca. I just graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with my bachelor's in psychology with minors in linguistics and nutrition. My main career interest is games user research. And yeah, I love games. I love video games.
Look, I'm also a person of many loves for video games, and I love that you love video games and you're also approaching that from a passion perspective of something you want to do. So, what kind of interested you in that space?
Wow, so let's go back about 20 years. So I started playing games probably when I was 2 years old. I could hold a Game Boy SP, for those who know. If you know, you know. It's one of the best handheld consoles of that time. I fell in love with it, and my mom always encouraged me to follow what I enjoy. And yeah, games have been that for a very long time. So I grew up with PlayStation 2, PSP, Nintendo DS, Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, you name it, PC as well. Of course, we have to mention the PC. And here's the thing. I always assumed that I'd never be able to have a lucrative career in games. I just thought, well, I'm not a game designer necessarily. I don't do visuals. I'm not this well-known artist. I'm not a programmer by any means. So how could I even work in games? I can't even think about working in games. So my other interest is, veterinary medicine. And I guess I say is because I still love animals. I still know a lot about it. I wanted to be a veterinarian for 17 years of my life. So yes, I know a thing or two about veterinary medicine. I wanted to be an equine and canine medicine vet. And listen, riding horses, going to events regarding horses and, dog shows and things like that, internships, you name it, I did that. But then as I was in my final year of high school and I was applying for colleges, I was thinking, well, let's try this veterinary medicine thing out. And I did an internship at the Penn Vet Working Dog Center at the University of Pennsylvania. So they train working dogs to go across the world and, protect people in important offices, presidents, that sort of thing, police dogs, cancer research. And I loved it. It was amazing. But I said to myself, I cannot do this every day for the rest of my life as much as I love it. Love playing with the puppies, love training them, love watching police dogs, love having them knock me over because these dogs are very strong and it's fun, but not something I want to do every day. So then I said, I love psychology. I took AP Psych in high school, loved it, love human behavior, great. I said, okay, let's do psych in college. I went in, I was like, okay, I know what I want my major to be. And I was thinking, well, I know I don't want to do clinical. That's for sure. Not clinical. But I'd like to help people with my knowledge of psychology, something in social or developmental psychology, with kids, something around that angle. But then I said, man, wouldn't it be great if I could combine my love for psychology and my love for video games that's been with me my entire life? So one day I just did a Google search. I was like, okay, psychology and video games, what'll come up? And something came up. It said UX. So UX, what's this? I never heard of it. And then it's user experience. I look it up and all that. But here's the thing. I found UX design first. And for a whole year, this is my freshman year of college. I'm at home, virtual classes. For a whole year, I was like, I want to do UX design because I can combine psychology and video games. Great. A year later, sophomore year, I discover UX research, which is actually what uses psychological research and games. So it combines that. UX design is, from a designer's perspective, which you do use your understanding of people to design games, so you're not doing research necessarily all day, which is what psychologists do for the most part in research-based professions. So I said, oh, this is what I meant to do from the get-go, not design. Okay. So from then on, I pursued UX research in games, and I said, I found more and more positions on it and more people who do that for a living in these big companies. There's Riot Games and then Epic Games and Nintendo. And I'm like, this can be a real career. And yeah, the rest is history. Now I'm here.
As a social sciences girly, you're speaking my language in my heart. I did anthropology as my undergrad, so I understand what you mean by looking at things from like an experiential perspective and how enjoyable research is looking at it from that lens because that's what put me in HR, right? And I'm doing things that's in what now? Employee experience and employee engagement. I'm like this is what I want to do. This is allowing me to put my two passions together that I like. And I love that you were able to find that as another social sciences girly. Finding that, especially within the realm of gaming, I think that is something that's so cool. I never thought about psychology going into that, into what UX research is. And are there like different subsets of UX research or is it all the same? What is it like within the gaming sphere?
Oh, I'm so glad you've asked. So there's there's UX research and there's user research. They're often conflated. One people could say, "Oh, user research," and actually mean UX research, and vice versa. From my understanding, because it's not even clear for user and UX researchers, I think we kind of do the same thing at the end of the day, because even we're confused. But there's UX research that focuses on the person's experience with the product, and then there's user researchers, which is supposedly, according to myth, the more the person, more the person. But at the end of the day, they're kind of the same thing. So, for me, it's making sure that, at least in games, ultimately our goal is to make a game that's enjoyable for our players. We want to know who our players are. We want to know who they are, what they need, what they want, and ultimately what are their motivations? How are they feeling when they're playing a game? And something I'd like to make the distinction as well, because I've received questions about marketing, like, oh, aren't you just doing marketing? That's just marketing, right? Marketing research. And I'm like, no. Although I understand why you'd say that. But marketing, think about it this way. So in marketing, let's say you have a car, you're selling a car. In marketing, you get a bunch of people in a room to look at that car and you're figuring out, okay, how can I sell this car to these people? How can I best market this vehicle to them? With a user researcher, instead what you're doing is you want a person in the room with a vehicle and you ask them to go and test the vehicle. Can you find where certain buttons are? Can you drive the vehicle? Do you enjoy how the vehicle feels? How do you feel driving it? Is there something you change about the vehicle? That is what a user researcher does. But with more than just vehicles, of course, because user researchers or UX researchers are everywhere in just about every industry. So yeah, just want to make those distinctions.
No, that's a really good analogy. And especially for me, for where I am right now, working with vehicles and within my internship. But I think that you provided a really good recap and distinction of what makes them different. And especially from your perspective of, oh, I thought UX design, that was everything. And then you found UX research, you're like, no, that is everything.
Exactly. Listen, there's a song by one of my favorite artists, Sade. I love Sade. And yes, I love her so much. And she has a song titled Keep Looking. And that's what I always keep that in mind. Keep looking. Always keep looking, because if you think you found the answer, great. But keep looking, because there might be something that lines up more with your interest and who you are. Don't ever stop looking. And if it doesn't exist, create it.
Yes. I am such a big person on that of, yes, if you cannot find an opportunity, create the opportunity yourself, if you have the capability to, of course. Never stop looking for what your dream is, never stop looking for what your passion is. And I'm glad that you didn't, and you seem like you had such keen values of just, this is exactly what I know I want to do. You weren't afraid to switch lanes and try out new things and say, oh, this wasn't for me, but that's okay. And like, where do those values come from for you? Did you have anybody that supported you in that? What was it like growing up for you where you developed such a sense of self?
Yeah, so my mom, she's my number one cheerleader, my partner in crime for just about everything. I mean, I'm telling you, like I mentioned earlier, she's the one who said from a young age, she's like, if you love video games, then let's make sure we nurture that love for video games. And really, I think that's such a major element of why I didn't just say, okay, well, I love games and I just love playing them and I can talk about them and that's it. But instead, I got the idea from her really to investigate further. If this is something I'd like to do as a career, how can I turn this into a career? So I went from passively enjoying games to breaking down games and understanding the development cycles behind those games. And in the first place, why were those games made? Who are the audiences for these games? For example, why, let's say, in the past we had a game about hmm, World War II, for example. Why did that come about? Why did the designers create a game with that in mind? Maybe they wanted to spread a certain message about the game, something about, let's say, for example, promoting peace, no war, of course, or historical significance. We want to teach people about the history of this war through this game, for example. So, why was this game developed in the first place? I learned all about that for my favorite games, and I keep learning that about all sorts of games. And now I'm playing a game, and at the same time, I'm thinking, is this a pleasurable user experience? I'm enjoying it, but would someone else enjoy it? For example, is someone because I can see, I thank God, I can see, I can use my hands, I can move as much as I need to. But is someone who is, blind in any capacity or deaf, can they play this game? And if they do play it, if there's some option to play it, can they actually enjoy it? So I'm thinking, yeah, I enjoy it. But why? Okay, I enjoy it because it has this function, the flow of every button in the game, every function is great. But would someone else enjoy it? And what would that look like? Oh, and yeah, so my mom's a huge part of that. She's like, explore whatever you want. And that's why when I was a hard headed young lady pursuing veterinary medicine for 17 years, where I was like, yes, 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 I want to do this, my mom went with me to the stables because I mentioned equine medicine. She went with me to the stables. She went to me with my writing lessons. I went to the writing lessons. Uh, she took me to different interviews to get internships and positions. That was her. She'd take time off work. She'd drive back quickly from work to pick me up from after school programs. That was her. She was like, if you want to do it, I want you to do it. If you don't want to do it, okay, I'll support you and help you find a new direction. So she's like, whatever your passion is, pursue it. Money's important, of course. Never lose sight of that because she knows I like a certain lifestyle. So she's like, you like that certain lifestyle? Pursue that. But also, while you get your feet in the industry, because it's not easy to enter the games industry, it's like, I'll be here to support you, but I want you to pursue that. And, one day you'll find that spot where you're financially comfortable with what you're doing. But right now, I want to support you to get wherever you need to be. And I'm here for you. And she's the best. Yeah.
Shout out moms everywhere. And I really appreciate that you had such a great figure that was able to help you and support you through anything, regardless of the changes. And I love your transparency around like, I like to live a certain lifestyle. I know I want to get somewhere that I am financially up and coming to, and I am willing to get where I need to go. And I have people behind me that are willing to support me in that same endeavor for where I need to get wherever I'm going. And I also love how transparent you were about how hard it may be to actually get into the gaming industry. And I would love to talk a little bit more about any of the challenges that you think are within that. So, how do you kind of grapple with those as you've seen them? And like, what do those challenges look like?
Yeah, well, historically in the games industry, there have been struggles with diversity. I want to be fully clear here. There's been issues. There have been many issues with diversity. Studios that are, mostly white, for example. And I'll also be clear here. Many of these studios have taken action to change that dramatically. I mean, just look at the presidents of Xbox and Blizzard Entertainment, for example, women of color, right? So we applaud that. We love that. We need to see more of that. But also, we're seeing, for example, in the next few weeks, I believe we have the Game Devs of Color Expo, which we love to see. And there have been so many uh, initiatives and efforts to make sure that we have more diverse perspectives in gaming, and not just you know people of different races, but also just different backgrounds in general. Where do you come from? You're not all coming from computer, you're of computer background, a computer science background. No, like you're not. A lot of people are coming from HR, psychology, of different backgrounds. English. We have people who did masters or PhDs in English come into gaming. So we have people from everywhere. And the industry is really taking a very big and positive step forward in that regard, which I'm very happy about. Um, but there's also the issue of a lot of layoffs. Unfortunately, in the past year, even past 2 years, but I'd say in the past year, it's gotten very, very rocky, just absolutely terrible. And I don't mean in the smaller companies necessarily. I mean the big, the AAA studios, PlayStation, Riot Games. It's very sad because these are people who've been in the industry, a lot of them for a while, and making wonderful work. If you've ever played, for example, there's League of Legends, or if you've ever watched Arcane on Netflix, love that show, amazing. Well, yeah, people just got laid off. People who've done this wonderful, beautiful, amazing work just got laid off after putting so much love into it. And that's just the way it is in companies. You just don't know where it's going to come from. That's just the fact of the matter when you don't work for yourself. I'm very clear on that. But the thing is, if you want to work for yourself in this industry and make a studio, you should have a name for yourself already working in these bigger studios, which are very hard to get into, especially because nowadays every other position you see is a senior role. Senior role, managing, you get lucky if you find a mid level, but most of them are senior roles. You are hard pressed to find junior roles, and the thing is, internships are available, sure, there are internships, and people do get them in college. But typically, once you're a senior, they don't want you. That's just the truth. They typically want sophomores or juniors, or people who graduate like a year or two later. And once you graduate, that gets even smaller. There are roles for people who graduate, but if you didn't get that experience and you were in college, then it gets so much harder. It's not impossible, but it gets so much harder. So, networking, attending events, getting that hands on experience in clubs or even unpaid projects, that's the way in, but it's still not easy. It's still possible, but still not easy.
No, yeah. And I appreciate you going through and listing those challenges as someone who's not familiar with the gaming industry, but also for those in the audience who may not know some of the challenges that are associated with getting into the industry, especially from an early career standpoint. I think that's very vital to understand that's tough. And the earlier that you are aware of it, like you said, the earlier you can go to things like networking events and working towards finding all these different resources that can help you get your foot in the door in any way that you can. And that leads me to segue a little bit in terms of like mentorship and working through that while you're in college. What was that like for you? Did you have any mentors in the gaming industry? What did mentorship look like for you?
Yes, my mentors have been invaluable. Absolutely. So I started mentorship in games my junior year of college because, as I mentioned before that I was like, oh, UX design, let's see what this is. And it was still very uncertain for me. I was like, okay, this is cool. You know, when you're at that stage where like, this is a cool career option and I'm doing some things to learn about it, but I'm not really in yet. Then, junior year, as soon as it started, I was like, oh yeah, wait, UX research, 100%, full stop, let's go. So then I was like, okay, let's get some mentors in that. So I looked into different programs. There's Latinx in gaming. Huge shout out to them. They're a wonderful organization that pairs Latinx individuals, whether you're in college or not, of all ages, with people who are in the industry, professionals who've been there for years, and they can mentor you, give you advice. And so I went to one of their events and met someone in UX design. I filled out a form and I was like, I'd love to speak to someone who's in UX research, but UX design is fine as well. And they didn't have someone in UX research at the time, so I spoke with, I believe, a UX designer and a UI UX. I think this person did UI specifically, user interface work. But when I spoke to the UX designer, she was like, "Oh yeah, I don't really do UX research. I do a little bit, but I can talk about design." And then she sent me an email. Hold on, wait a minute. I know someone who does UX research at one of these big game companies. And I was like, "Let's get the ball rolling. I'd love to meet them." So, she introduced me to this individual, and I had a one-on-one meeting, just a one-time thing, supposed to be a one-time thing. And I just asked them some questions. They were amazing, and they were like, I wish you the best of luck in the industry. If you have any questions, just, shoot me an email. Cool. So let's fast forward to December. And the IGDA, which is the International Game Developers Association, is having a mentorship opportunity. And so I signed up for it. I said I'd love a UX research mentor. I know it's selective, but of course, shoot your shot, because if you don't, it's always going to be a no, no matter what. So I did. And in January, I get the email that I was matched with that exact same individual who I had the one-on-one with a few months earlier. And she was like, "Hey, I remember you." And I was like, "I remember you too. This is amazing." And she became my first mentor in the industry. So I'm telling you, they're just so amazing. They've mentored me in just about everything in UX research. I'm telling you, everything. And they were just so open and transparent. Like, listen, as a woman in games, because I'll say this, like I said, the industry's become more diverse, and that's wonderful. We're seeing more and more women in games, which was not the case in the past, but is now, which is awesome, including my mentor. So she gave me, the 411 on everything games and UX and her transition into the industry. And it's just been great. And I still communicate with her from time to time. She's like, if you need help with anything, let me know. Just wonderful. And then I had another mentor who is in a different role. So I'll mention this. My first mentor that I had in games, she was a senior, and now she's a manager of the entire UX team. So huge. And the other mentor I got is let's see, how should I describe it? Because here's the thing, you'll find different roles at different companies that are literally the same role under different names, but they're all the same thing. And so this mentor is like a second level UX researcher. And she was able to give me perspective that my senior mentor was not able to give me. Because this other mentor started at a different point in life. She just graduated and she was doing UX research from the time she was in college, and then she graduated and got into this company. My other mentor had been running her a therapy clinic for 10 years on her own clinic. And then she got into UX research because, psychology, that little psychology UX bridge connection. So I had those different perspectives. The other mentor, my more recent one, she doesn't really do psychology, but she got into it from more of a business perspective. And so I got those two different perspectives of someone who's at the senior level and someone who's more mid-level, and they were able to give me two very different stories and approaches to research. Where one was like, I prefer, after many years of doing this certain approach to research, although juniors might do this, and then the mid-level one's like, yeah, I totally love this approach, that's fine. So I'll say this, have mentors in different positions, you'll get different points of view, and those will complement each other for you to write your own story in the industry. So mentorship. Do it if you can.
Also a big person on mentorship. Woo! Like I I love the idea of having multidimensional mentors, kind of to what you explained, of like they're in completely different stages of their lives and they offer so many valuable perspectives from different things. Like now I want someone on the podcast who's run a therapy clinic before to talk about UX and what that is like because I know that is probably completely different from her perspective, and everything she's had to analyze and what she's had to work through with patience and understanding from that experience, I know she has probably like a whole holistic well-being perspective that I would love to learn. And even from the business perspective too, how do you look at things? You probably look at things way more strategically versus holistically, and it's more targeted or segmented towards making sure that piece by piece, every part of the experience is valuable in such a different way that may not necessarily have to work all together in like a holistic sense. So I love that you were able to have those experiences and still even have those magical moments of, hey, I remember you. Like, shoot your shot, guys. Like she said, just shoot your shot. The worst that people can say is no. But I think that was definitely a part of your story that was written of you were meant to be with that person. Like you had done the work, you'd put in the work to just put yourself out there and you were rewarded immensely. Like I think that's so amazing that you take care of yourself in this way of just pushing yourself forward and just shooting your shot wherever you go. I think that's just it's such a healthy reminder to just keep doing what you love and just push forward and push through. I know it all probably hasn't been so easy in UX and you like all of that type of research and design, but the way that you articulate and communicate it makes it sound so simple for people like me who are not in that field to understand. And I would love to know from your standpoint and maybe how you would explain this because I'm a little bit curious. End to end, what is UX research like? How would like what would be the best way that you would break it down for people if anybody asked you that question?
Okay, first I'd say take a seat. This will take a while, but don't worry, it won't. I'll try to shorten it. But really, as I mentioned earlier, truthfully, the end goal is to make sure that the game, at least, and this is specific to games UX research, is enjoyable for the player and really for our players. And considering who our players are, how can we make these games better? Mind you, in the entire UX research process, we are not designing anything. We're not designers. We're not going to change the game physically ourselves. We're not going to be making designing these critical game pieces. That's what the UX designers do. That's their thing. We are informing what the UX designers do, however, with our research. So here's the thing, and historically, not every game studio has done it this way. Every game studio has their own approach. Some game studios have in-house UX researchers. Some game studios like to contract outside of their studios. And UX research can be done at any point in the game's development cycle. I mean, from ideation all the way to launch, past launch, everything in between. And it's made up of, there are many elements, for example, usability testing, play testing, where you get players to play this game and you see what they're saying about the game, how they feel playing it. You can also use biometrics and you can, use eye tracking software to see where they're looking on the screen and how they react to certain things in the game. Uh, and interviews as well, interviews and surveys. You ask, like, oh, how did you feel about this? And I'll say this, there are good surveys and bad surveys, where, for example, you can say, these are two different questions. So what was your favorite aspect of, let's say, I'm just going to make up a game level real quick. What was your favorite aspect of level 3 in the game versus which aspect did you like more of level 3 in this game? The combat, the music, or the level design? In the first question, you're asking them, okay, what was your favorite thing? That's it. Very basic question, broad. It's an okay question where they can say, well, for example, I didn't like any of it. Or they can say, I liked this super obscure element of level 3. But in the other question, you're forcing them to choose one of those three answers, which might not be what they had in mind. So that's not a very good question to ask. So it's important that when we ask our players these questions, we're not forcing them to choose an answer that they might not have had in mind, because maybe they had one of these in mind, and that's great, perfectly fine. But we want to give them that option. We want to know what they're thinking and not impose a certain thought or answer on our players, because at the end of the day, that's not going to give us good data. And we need solid data to know what our players want and need, who they represent, and that's the data we'll be giving to our UX designers, and of course, other people who are involved in designing the game. So really, it's about getting that good data from play tests and interviews and surveys, and getting the right audience as well, making sure that if our game is tailored to let's say specifically women of color. We're not contracting, 10, 50-year-old men, right? Who are not as diverse or are not a certain age. We need to make sure we know who we're recruiting to be in our sample and to make sure we're getting the best accurate data, the most accurate data, really. So that's not where this ends. It's a lot of data, but our team has to understand this data. And for that to happen, we need to explain this data. And it's not just the senior level who's like, okay, the senior has the data and they're explaining to all the juniors and mid-level what that is. No, we're all involved in understanding what that data means and communicating it to stakeholders, because at the end of the day, it's data, it's great, it is hopefully very accurate for our player base. But a stakeholder sees it and they're like, what am I looking at? What are these bars and what's this chart? What are these numbers? What does this all mean? At the end of the day, I want to launch a game that sells well. What is your research going to do for me? So you need to learn how to communicate that to stakeholders and say, well, this research is important because X reason, Y reason, whatever the case may be. And it's not just about collecting data and understanding your players, it's understanding your stakeholders and really being able to communicate what your data means to them. Because if you fail to do that, the research has become irrelevant to the stakeholder, and you don't want that to happen. So know how to communicate as well. That's a huge part of it. How do you sell your data? Not your personal data, don't do that, but your data that you've acquired from your players, and turn that into something actionable for designers, and that stakeholders will say, okay, this research is worth incorporating and worth investing more money in. Because UX research saves money, but not all stakeholders see that. So we need to make sure they see and understand that.
Okay. I'm going to try and recap what you just said in like stages, and feel free to tell me if I get this wrong. But starting from ideation with what type of data and what are you trying to gather from your participants in order to create relative like research surveys or things that your participants that are within the study can actually fill out. So after doing that, then you recruit your participants based off of audience segmentation. Who are you trying to target for what your achieved goals are? From there is that testing phase where you actually have those participants who are recruited go and test the game to provide the relevant data for these surveys that you guys have created. From there, it's data collection and analyzation. So, okay, we have the data. Let's see how we can work to understand this as a unit, not from like a senior trickling, cascading it down to juniors, but as a whole unit, how are we able to interpret this data so we all understand it? And then going into presentation. So, how are we able to package up all this data, present it in a way that our designers and everybody involved can understand so they can enhance the user experience or the game design based off of that relevant information? So that way, all audiences that we are targeting enjoy the game and we all have a happy outcome.
Hey, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Good job. I mean, that's great. I'd say, yeah, no, that's phenomenal. Honestly, you should consider user research. But listen, yeah, so at the very beginning, we think about who we want to recruit, and we make a checklist, and we think about what our surveys will look like as well. Uh, yeah, no, it's actually pretty accurate. Great job. And I will say this though, the research never stops. It never stops. I mean, once our stakeholders like, okay, great, we go back to the drawing board and we keep, finding ways to incorporate this research, and we communicate with our designers and we keep communicating with our designers. And then something else comes up and we go back to the research and we do research on a new element of the game or an update for the game or for accessibility purposes where we're like, okay, we've tested for an audience that, is fully capable of playing this game on normal settings. Now we're going to test this on an audience, for example, of individuals who are partially or mostly blind or deaf, that sort of thing. So it never stops. And that's the great thing about this, because it shouldn't stop. At the end of the day, we want to make sure as many players can enjoy these games as possible, and they should be able to enjoy them without issue, regardless of who they are. Is it easy? No. Is it necessary? Yes, yes, and yes.
Honestly, I first of all, thank you for reaffirming that I got that right. But I understood all of that information because of how you communicated it. I mean, you have such a way with words and really understanding and making audiences understand the value and the importance of the work and the research that you all do, especially from a sphere that a lot of people probably don't think about because it's behind the scenes and it's not like character design or art. It's not something that can be visually seen. Maybe on the UX design side, yes, but on the US research like side that's able to help them interpret what to do to create these visuals and these user experiences, I think that is so cool and that's so interesting. Like during my time with my internship at Nintendo of America, I never had the opportunity to interact with as many like tech people in that space of UX research. But it definitely, from an HR perspective, in this standpoint, it really makes me happy to hear about user experience research because it's almost like a uniquely like creative form of HR. That's so cool, minus employee relations. But it's so cool to see other forms of how we are able to create inclusive and accessible environments for everybody that's involved, from the consumer experience standpoint. And then, of course, in some cases, if we have internal companies and internal consumers like our employees that love our games 100%, but definitely from that UX experience as a whole, I love the work and the research that you're doing and how passionate you are about what you're doing and just creating this healthy environment for everybody to thrive in. And I know that your minor was also in like nutrition and health, right? You did something with your degree in that space. What made you interested in that?
Yeah, so when I entered college, I was like, this is my mindset. I was very rigid with it. I said psychology, double major in psychology and nutrition. The thing is, at Penn, you can't just major in nutrition. Nutrition's in the nursing school, and you have to take that as a second major or as a minor, but you can't just major in nutrition. So I was like, okay, yeah, no problem, nutrition major. And 3 courses in to the nutrition major, I was like, okay, I really enjoy this. This is great. But if there's something I've always known about myself is that I am not a chemistry person. I have tried it, and now I know I am not a chemistry person. Biology's cool, okay, great. But once it gets into the nitty gritty of the chemistry and atoms, and yeah, we don't do that. We're not going to do that. So I said, okay, here's what I'll do instead of the nutrition major, because the nutrition major is chemistry heavy in the more advanced courses. So I said, okay, by the end of I think it was, let's see, my freshman year, I'd done 2 nutrition courses, 2 or 3. And then sophomore year, I think it might have been my third or fourth course. And I said, okay, we're halfway through the nutrition minor, which would be 6 courses. Let's not, where I know I'm not going to do the major. That's okay. But I need to finish the minor because I'm already halfway there. And I do really enjoy this, as long as I don't have to, do full on chemistry. We're fine. So I said, okay, let's do the nutrition minor. So I finished the nutrition minor, and I did take, I'd say there's 1 course that was very chemistry heavy, but that's okay because I'm here, so you know that I survived. So, at the end of the day, I love what I learned in nutrition. I learned the basics of nutrition, and then all the way to fitness, exercise, disease, macronutrient metabolism. That was the chemistry heavy one. And I'm just so happy I took that minor. I also took what was it? Anthropology. It was an anthropology course in food and culture. So it was talking about foodways now and back then, in thousands of years ago, and then 100 years ago, and then 10 years ago. Has that changed, evolved? How we evolved as consumers, as people who eat different foods. Some of us choose to eat organic foods if we can. Some of us don't really care. Some of us strictly eat non-organic or GMO. Some of us don't really know what any of this stuff means. So it's important to understand who we are as consumers, people who eat food every day because we must, but what that means. And my entire life, I've been clear on the gut brain connection. I've always loved the study of how what you eat affects how you think, but also how you think affects what you eat. So the way you're thinking can affect whether or not you grab a bag of Cheetos versus, let's say, an apple and some peanut butter, for example. And then if you grab those Cheetos, that's going to affect how you think in the future as well about what you eat next. There are many studies on eating palatable foods, highly palatable foods, like think French fries and cake and chips. and how that affects what you'd like to eat in the future, which ultimately, if you're eating these foods as the bulk of your diet, you will continue to eat that because that's what you want to eat. Mentally, that's just how it works. Your brain is like, we like this. Your taste buds are like, we love this. And so you continue to do that. And I've had my own journey with food growing up, food and health, and debunking so many myths about, the diet. Oh, you need to diet and do cardio every single day. That's the only way to lose weight. And being healthy is not exclusively about losing weight necessarily. That can be a part of it. But the way I see it, that's not necessarily the case. And if you think it is, okay, great. Consult a nutritional professional. Whatever your goal is in nutrition and getting healthier, consult that nutritional professional because even your doctor, your primary physician might not know that much about that. So consult professionals. I'll just say that. I have to put that out there because I see so much misinformation. Don't believe all that stuff you see on YouTube, all these ads about, I know the perfect plan based on your body for you to lose weight and become healthier. That is not the case. And I'm glad I picked up that minor because it taught me that. But it also complements my my psychology major. And, how people think and go about their lives, because let's be real here. Every day we have new things to do. We have to go to work. We might have kids to take care of, so many things to do. We might grab a quick snack. We might not eat all day. That throws your body off balance. And we need to find that balance through food. And part of it is how we think in psychology. So I really chose that study combination to understand that connection in myself and others. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah. And I can even see how it correlates with what we were talking about earlier of like even UX research and just thinking kind of abstractly about health and creating, like you were saying, curating healthy environment for everybody to enjoy games and for everybody to enjoy those experiences. And definitely on that note of health is wealth, I totally understand. I recently thought about just how one day I was so upset about something and I was like, and I grabbed Rice Krispies and I was like, I don't even eat these. But it was like I had one laying around the office and I was just like, what? Like it was so confusing to myself when I'm usually like when I'm down about something or I'm like, ooh, let me get a nice salad or something. But it was like a unique feeling that I hadn't felt in such a long time that I was just like, oh my goodness, let me just grab something sugary. And I even remember one of my coworkers telling me, if you eat more sugar, like it's definitely going to make you crash. And I was just like, I think I could be able to handle it. Uh, Long story short, I was not able to handle it. I got home and knocked out so quickly because of how like it affected my body. And even thinking about that in like healthy work and like work environments outside of the digital space that don't exist within a screen, it is very important to take care of yourself. And it's very important to make sure that it fits your needs. And although we definitely have some great information out there and resources, identifying what is right for you, especially, can look a little bit different, especially even from a lot of the health practices that we know now. It may differ from your weight to your age to your race to your gender, just making sure that you are holistically thinking about yourself when it comes to health and wealth and not just surrounding how can I get through the day, because that is a very big part of our lives. Just taking stuff day by day, which is real, but making sure that we can create practices around that still enable us long term to be healthy and influence ourselves positively about how we think. And I see for you how when you said it connects with psychology and I definitely think it connects with you in gaming. So I'm fully expecting for you to be on like a game about food science one day and your everything just combines in that UX research and what results come out of that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That would be a dream come true, honestly. If I could combine these passions, I would be floored. I'd be crying. I'd be so happy. So I'd be so, so glad to do something like that to promote wellness and health because there really is so much misinformation out there about food and the element of weight loss, which I perfectly understand. But here's the thing, and I don't know if you've heard about the recent controversy with Ozempic, which is a medication for individuals with type 2 diabetes, and that helps, reduce the risk of heart disease, heart attacks, and it lowers blood sugar levels. However, a lot of individuals, even celebrities, have taken it upon themselves to purchase Ozempic one way or another for weight loss, just for weight loss. These are individuals who don't have type 2 diabetes, who don't need the medication, most importantly, whose doctors haven't told them to take this medication, and they're going and purchasing it anyways because one of the potential side effects of Ozempic is weight loss. It's terrifying to me, honestly, to see that because I have a close family friend he has type 2 diabetes, and he depends on Ozempic to keep him, going throughout the day, to lower his blood sugar levels. He needs this medication. It's life-saving for him. And he, for many months, had trouble getting it. And let me remind you, this is someone who went to the doctor, and his doctor said, you should be on Ozempic because it'll help you for your heart and your blood sugar levels. He wasn't able to find it for months. And he had to depend on other medications, many other medications to keep him throughout the day, and he was not looking so good. I'll tell you that. And it's heartbreaking to me because I'm like, this is someone who really needs this medication, who this medication is made for, and he can't access it because of what's going on with people just buying it left, right, and center to lose weight. That is not safe. That is not safe for the people who actually need this medication, who their doctors have prescribed it to, and for the people who are taking it just because they want to lose weight. Let me tell you, that's not how this works. And many times when you take these medications for weight loss specifically, you will rebound. You will rebound, you will gain that weight back. There's no, I'll keep it off. No, that's not how that works with these medications. It can be the case for some people, sure. I can't speak for everyone. However, the data shows that that's just not the case for most people. And please, just I want to say this because it's a heartbreaking case for me, especially I'm seeing this with friends and people who, I don't even know, but it shouldn't be the case that if you need a medication, people who don't need the medication are buying it to an extent where you can't afford it or find it anymore. That should not be the case. Please be conscious of your fellow human who does need that medication and stop harming yourself as well with this medication that you do not need or any other medication that you don't need because I've heard that it helps me lose weight or it could help me lose weight. That is dangerous for your health. That is dangerous for their health. Please think about them. Please think about yourself and consult real medical professionals, not a TikTok or some trend.
No, I 100% agree. Do what is best for you, but that's also within your means, right? Of things that are necessary for you. And if there are alternative routes before going to something that is potentially more drastic and unpredictable, just, reevaluate and always speak to your support systems and speak to medical professionals that can help you out. So that way, those who do need those resources can have those because I definitely can understand. And I've seen so many sad stories of people not being able to afford like simple things that they need for survival that not everybody needs. So hopefully, that'll be something that will change as the world grows, honestly. Um, and just be able to create, again, like a more inclusive environment for everybody in that same way of just resource allocation. So, yeah, I love that you talked about that and that we were able to have like an open concept and discussion about that because I think that is also something so important that is outside of, again, just our day to day. That is something long term. That is something that could be detrimental, like in multiple ways to those who don't need it and to those who do. So being able to just, again, moderate yourself and be self aware of that in order to, again, provide a great environment where everybody can get what they need.
Definitely. And I'll briefly mention I speak to the mom with 10 kids. I speak to the single bachelor. I speak to the young lady who's looking at herself in the mirror and saying, am I happy with how I look? Am I happy with how I feel? Am I happy with what I can wear? Can I wear what I want to wear? Is my energy as it should be, or do I feel fatigued? I speak to everyone here because your stories are all different with food. Your interactions are all going to be different with food and medication and, your mind as well, how your mind's feeling. And you will see solutions where people are like, this works, this is great. You can test things within, being safe, of course. Please be safe testing certain. And that could be like a diet plan where there's like a Mediterranean diet, that's okay. I like the Mediterranean diet myself. I find it very effective and delicious, mainly. Uh, but please test these things carefully. Speak with real medical professionals, and as long as you do things by the book and according to your needs, regardless of who you are. And I'm not saying meal prep every day because that's not feasible for a lot of people. Even me, I don't have kids. I don't have a ton of responsibilities, and even that it's hard for me to do meal prep. I have to schedule exercise every day and all that. That's not easy for anyone, and I'm not expecting it to be. Just do what's within reach for you to be healthy. And yeah, that's my piece on that.
No, period. You definitely ate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I love just hearing you talk about all the changes that people could make that's within their means. And again, just, oh, I wish and I want to see these changes in the world so we can all, positively coexist. And I really thought about that from the UX perspective of you. Is there anything that you would change within the UX landscape now that you've kind of been through it? You've had mentors that have also helped you with knowledge around it and experience. What are some things that you are looking to change or things that could improve within the UX research space?
More junior roles, please. Please, junior roles. We'd love to see more. Seriously, give a junior a chance. Give that junior perspective a chance because you don't know what you might get from that. Uh, Juniors have perspectives that seniors don't, and vice versa, of course. But give that junior a chance. You don't know what surprise they can bring to your studio or company, and that might just be what you're looking for or what you didn't know you needed. So please give juniors a chance because there are many senior roles, many mid-level roles, and that's great. There are many people qualified for those roles and who should be working those, and we need those. But we also need those juniors who can develop and grow in a company or in a studio where they start as a junior and then they become mid-level, then they rise to senior and manager. That's amazing. And really, I'll also say this. When you do that, you get to shape that individual with your studio's culture and the way your studio does UX research. Because each studio, like I mentioned earlier, does UX research differently. So when you have a junior, you're not picking someone up who has a lot of UX research experience, but with different approaches from different companies, which is great and has its own place. But you're picking someone up who might have some experience or little experience, and you can shape them to be who your studio needs. So, consider that. And also accessibility. I place so much importance on this because, like I mentioned earlier, everyone should be able to enjoy games, regardless of what your capabilities are, cognitive or physical. You should be able to enjoy games fully. I don't care what your state is. I do care because, research cares. But I mean, regardless of who you are, you should be able to enjoy games. And the research needs to be there to help you enjoy them. So the more we see accessibility research, the happier I'll be. And the happier our audiences will be, and the bigger our audiences will be. So invest in this research. I promise it's so worth it. And these people who've had difficulty playing games for one reason or another will appreciate it as well. It's just necessary. Please, we all should be able to enjoy games and the research has to be there to support these individuals. Please, let's do it. More and more studios are doing this, but let's place even more emphasis on this.
Oh, that's amazing. And I feel like that's such a perfect way for us to wrap up, especially as juniors ourselves in an early career. I really just want to thank you so much for all of the insightful information that you gave on UX, psychology, nutrition, health, mentorship, how you have the values that you have, and really placing so much emphasis on the things that you care about and how integrated those are into your professional aspirations as well. I really feel like I've learned so much from this conversation, but also have felt kind of a boost of energy from this conversation and how refreshing and almost intricate a lot of the parts are within our conversation. So I'm super excited to see what's next for you and what's on the lookout.
Thank you so much, Amaya. And if you don't mind, I'd like to mention something else about mentorship real quick.
Yeah.
You know, Thank you. So I've undergone mentorship, loved it. I will keep doing it. I think I'll be 90 years old and still seeking mentorship. I'm not even joking. I think I will because it's great to have someone. And an older individual can be mentored by a younger one and vice versa. Let's not forget that. It's not about age. It's about experience, and that can go either way. It's a two-way street. It really anyone can do it. I promise you. And the thing is, as a mentee and a mentor myself, the way I see it is give back. So I'd like to conclude this by saying, please give back in any capacity that you can. I wouldn't be here today without all the mentors I've had in the past, whether that was in high school and college, UX, games, whatever the case may be. All my mentors, everyone who's helped me get here, I want to give back in some form. And for me, that's a lot through games, of course, but education as well. I'm huge on education and motivating high school students, for example, to really pursue dreams that they didn't even conjure, they couldn't even imagine, but can think of when they consider that some things don't exist and I can create them because I have that power. And, there's financial power we need to consider, of course, but there's also the power of having an idea and making those connections and making things come to life. And I recently concluded a fellowship where I mentored students and taught students about grit, which, if you don't know about grit, please go and learn about it. Grit is amazing. Uh, Dr. Angela Duckworth is a wonderful resource for this. Please go and look her up. I was her student and I did a fellowship for her in grit, loved it, taught students about grit and passion and perseverance through psychology and how you can turn your life around just by considering how important it is to have a support system, understand yourself and your needs, be realistic about where you want to be and where you are right now and where you've been. Use your current journey to form the rest of the journey forward. And mentor wherever you can. I love mentoring students. I'm like, listen, your background matters, and it doesn't. And here's where it matters. It matters because you can really, really market yourself to places that don't have your background. Studios and companies that don't have someone with that background can really capitalize on what your background is. And you can market yourself as, listen, you don't have someone like me. You don't have someone who's had this experience. And here I am, and I can provide something that you've never seen before or that you need. And also, it doesn't matter because you can come from any background and pursue any career. It is never too late. Of course, I'll be real here, some paths are easier than others. That will, always be a factor, but it will never be impossible and it'll be easier the more connections and the more knowledge you have. But please don't say, well, I don't see people who look like me doing that, so I guess I don't fit. I just don't. I don't see a woman of color. I don't see someone who looks like this. I don't see someone older than 50 doing this career in technology or getting it for the first time. I don't stand a chance. Yes, you do. Please stop saying that. Please remember me. If you ever say I can't or I don't fit, yes, you do. And if you don't think you fit, okay, make yourself fit. Do that for yourself. Don't do yourself a disservice and don't disqualify yourself from applying to a role or getting somewhere when you don't have the power for that. Because when you're applying for a role, whatever the case may be, you don't have the power to say, you don't get the job. That's up to the hiring manager and whoever else is in charge of that. Never disqualify yourself. Don't do that, okay? Shoot your shot. You'll miss every shot you don't take, so take the shot. Even if it ends up in someone else's yard and not through the hoop. It's fine. Just try. And give back whenever you can.
Thank you so much. That was an even better message than the one before of a better way to wrap up. Oh my gosh. Just I have honestly nothing to add to that. Everybody, what she said, like what she said times 2, times 3, times 5, times 100 actually. Just shoot your shot, give back, and most importantly, don't count yourself out. And I know that you won't. So
Thank you, Maya. It's been wonderful speaking with you, learning about your journey as well, and thank you for having me. It's been fun. It's been fun. Thank you so much.
thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Intentional Intern Podcast. As always, let me know what or who you guys want to hear from next, and I'll see you guys next time, sharing another student with an amazing story.